Hello and welcome to another edition of Music Gazing. Tonight we have a very special program. We're going to bring a very special guest with us to talk about a set of songs that pretty much span the whole entire lifetime to be written. These songs are Richard Strauss' Brentano Lieder. For this program, we have invited virtuoso soprano Abigail Kravczynska, who's going to help us walk you through the creative process of this piece, as well as the rehearsal process, what it takes for a singer to sing something so complicated and so sophisticated. And after that, you can see the performance of the entire Brentano Lieder, performed by the Arlington Philharmonic. I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Thank you for watching. So here we are with this wonderful soprano, Abigail Kravczynska, and she has joined us today to talk a little bit about this fantastic Strauss Lieder that we just performed with the Arlington Philharmonic. And I would like to ask you a little bit about yourself. How long have you been singing?
Well, I've been singing professionally probably since I was in high school. And then I decided to go on and get my various degrees in music. But I guess I really came out of my shell probably around age 14. I was actually pretty shy before that, if you can believe it. I didn't like the spotlight much. My mom had to push me on stage for a couple of dance recitals growing up.
That's wonderful. And at that age, you talk about age 14, and we just performed these very complex songs. At that age, would you imagine yourself singing something so complicated? What was the music you imagined?
Yeah, I don't think I would have imagined myself doing Strauss with orchestra. I think I was more musical theater based, and did the 24 Italian hits, and you have aspirations, but I think when you're that young, you're also focusing on composers that are actually approachable for you at that time. So Strauss is not something I would give a 14-year-old. I'm not even sure I would give a 20-year-old Strauss. I think it's something that's a very refined composer that you approach much later on, when you kind of figure out the colors of your voice, the flavor of your voice, if that's the right way to describe it. And no, so I guess the short answer is no. I don't think I would have imagined myself doing quite the complex song cycles we just performed.
When did you meet Strauss?
Actually, in grad school at New England Conservatory, I did a set of some of his songs and for a Liederabend performance. So they have a great collaborative piano department there, and so it was a way for vocalists to get some extra recital time and the collaborative pianist to get some extra collaborating time. And so I did do, I think, about 5 songs, including like Aller Seelen and Nichts, and trying to think of the other ones off the top of my head. They're not ringing a bell, but there's a song cycle of about 8 of them, and I chose 5 of them. So I would say about 6 to 7 years ago I was introduced, and then it came up a little later, about this time last year, I would say, starting to think about, well, no, I guess it was not this time last year. It was when we started talking about what repertoire we were going to do for the concert.
In mood, big rehearsal 3.
Philharmonic. You won our competition in the most advanced division, and you were a clear winner. You blew everyone out of the water, and you were impressive in both your range, your dynamics, and it was incredible. What I don't remember is how did we decide on these Strauss? Was it I who suggested the Strauss, or did you bring the Strauss?
I think I had started to think about the Strauss because I wanted to do a recital in the fall. And it was one of the things that my teacher and I were discussing, doing this song cycle, the Brentano Lieder. And, you know, we thought, she and I, when I won and they said, okay, you can perform with orchestra, you know, you can do arias, that's okay. You know, we could have done a few arias from various things like that I actually won the competition with, but we thought it might be nice because you don't always get to choose your repertoire. Like we kind of, it was a nice option that I actually got to have input into it instead of saying, you know, usually you audition for something or you're being considered for a very specific piece of music, but because we were part of the collaboration, we thought, well, this might be a good challenge. And my teacher had thought Strauss would be a good fit in my voice, and we were right. And I think we both talked about the 4 last songs,
right.
And we thought, you know, I think we need to work on a few other songs before we go to the last ones. You know, it's like that's something that really truly comes with age. Like I couldn't think about singing those at this moment, and so when we think more along the lines of Strauss and what I'm capable of doing and what I should be doing right now, the Brentano Lieder were a better fit overall.
Great. What can you tell us about these amazing songs? I know that there was some large expanse of years to finally come to the final product that we performed, right?
Sure. Strauss wrote these early on in his career, and then he revisited them to orchestrate them. He thought, these are not juicy enough at just the piano. We need to add a large orchestra to make them really sing. And what's interesting is that they're all very uniquely different pieces. And I find that each piece almost represents a different opera character that he has either previously written or is going to write. So you have a little bit of Sophie from Der Rosenkavalier. You have a little bit of Octavian also, who is technically the mezzo role, but, you know, Strauss mezzos are not really mezzos. And then you have this Amor, which is the 5th song, which is so totally Cervinetta from Ariadne of Naxos. And so you have a large range of colors that the voice has to take on, as well as characters.
Brentano songs. The German is Lieder, but why are these called Brentano?
Well, Brentano was the librettist, so he wrote the text for the song. And he wrote them much earlier than Strauss ever would. I mean, he was in a whole nother century than Strauss. And he was a very religious person. He was also a very psychological person. Freud was a big inspiration for him. And these texts can be kind of scandalous to be written in those days, not only because of when they were written, but being a devout Catholic. And later on, something really interesting about Brentano is later on in his career, he wrote down the utterances of this nun who was dying, but was being, apparently was speaking the word from God. And he sat at her feet and wrote the utterances. And I mean, that takes a really religious person to have the patience and the belief in order to do that. And so when you read these texts and it talks about, just some of the dark and the light, and there are some, virginal references and things like that, you can see that there were religious inspirations, but you can also see how that could be a little scandalous too, to talk about the bridegroom's wedding night, for example, in number 1, and later on to talk about Cupid, Amor, being this rascally little kid who messes everything up, which we can all attest to, I think, at some point. We've all been hurt by Cupid. And so the texts are really interesting as far as they're not really connected to one another, but they all have that sort of dark and light, and can be construed politically, could be construed emotionally, could be about a relationship, could be a commentary on what was happening in the time period as well. So that's where they their name from, was just from Brentano, the librettist.
In preparing these songs, the orchestra and I noticed that every song is absolutely different from each other. How do you manage to jump from these 5 different mini operas in a way?
Sure. How do I jump from them? I think you just have to rehearse them that way and treat them sort of as their own thing. It's the same way I would suppose to say that I practice my 5 arias that I take into auditions. I mean, if I sing Gilda at one point and then they ask me to sing Servinetta for the next, those are not only 2 different composers, those are 2 different characters, those are 2 different operas. And so I think as part of your opera training and theater training in general, you learn how to kind of be able to change on the dime and just be in the moment. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. And when my teacher and I were studying these and practicing them and doing dry runs of them, her biggest thing she said was just sing. Just sing what's on the page. Just think about the text. And that's all you really have to do. You don't have to flip really from one character to another. You just have to sing the text honestly, and the character kind of morphs itself from doing that. It doesn't have to be so drastic. If you don't think of it so drastically, they kind of all can seamlessly move together.
as we know, are in German. I mean, how good is your German? Do you speak German fluently, or have you studied the text so well that you know every word? How does a singer approach songs that are in different languages? Because I assume that you can also sing in French, and we have heard you sing in Italian during the competition. How can you manage all these languages and to be able to tell the story in a language that is not your own?
Sure. That's a very good question, and it's something, again, it comes with training. It's part of your undergraduate degree, your graduate degree. Not only do you have to know what they mean, you have to know how to say them. You know, it's not Lieder, it's Lieder. And it's not Strauss, it's Strauss, you know, and finding out not only just the meaning, but the pronunciation as well. And I don't speak German fluently. I don't really speak any of the other languages fluently. But you pick up enough words, and what's beautiful about Romantic languages is that, you know, there are some words that really carry over, like l'amour, and it's the same in Spanish basically as it is in Italian and as it is in French, and then when you get to German it changes to Liebe, but it's along the same lines, right? And so I think when you have the Romantic languages you can rely on those Latin roots. That helps a little bit. Singing things over and over, certain words always come up in certain operas. They just become words that you just know over and over from time. And I also think I spend the time writing out the text, you know, when I write, when I'm looking at a piece of music, I write the translation right over the note so that I don't have to go and look it up. I have it right there, and when I'm learning it, I'm learning this word means this, and so I'm going to sing it differently. Because you also sing words, you know, you're not going to sing the word der the same way you're going to sing the word Liebe, just for example. Der meaning the and Liebe meaning love. You're not going to sing them the same way. And I am practicing my German, though. I'm using an app on my phone trying to get more fluent at it because I have a lot of German coming up in this season, and I think the more you can immerse yourself in it, the better off you are. I mean, when you watch master classes of great singers, and I can remember this very vividly growing up, they always say, okay, if you had one piece of advice to give to young singers, what would you say? And they're like, learn your languages. It will help you so much, not only to learn music quickly, but just throughout the board. You'll be a better colleague if you want to go to Europe and if you want to be recognized from other places other than just being in the United States. If you have other languages, it puts you in another set above other people. So I've been working on German. It's not something I'm fluent at, but I'm hoping by the end of 2017 I will be close. I have to practice it. Maybe I need to take a trip to Germany.
Absolutely, do it.
Yeah.
I remember that before you performed with the orchestra, you sang these same songs in recital, accompanied by piano. In fact, accompanied by the husband of your teacher, if I'm right.
That's right, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit, how does it compare to sing with pianos and accompaniment or with a huge orchestra? What sort of adjustments you have to make to the voice, to the text, anything that you found that was so different from one instrument to the other?
That's the great challenge, I would say, in general, of even just thinking of Lieder in a recital setting and going to opera. It's the best answer, I guess I can say, is that you only have to work with one other person when you're doing the piano, so you can give and take a little bit more. You can take a little more time here, breathe, like they can really hear you breathe. You can really do more specific nuances. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen that way in an orchestra by any means, because, you know, having you there right next to me, you were catching everything that I was doing and breathing with me, and as well as Nicole, the concertmaster, you know, really keeping me with you guys. But you also can't necessarily hold this note a little bit longer, because then you have, you know, 50 more people to catch up to where you are. The colors are also very different. You get used to, and this is true of anything, when you're in an opera rehearsal and you go from being the piano tech to the orchestra tech, everything changes about the colors. You're so used to blatantly hearing this F sharp, blah, 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 but suddenly now it's like being by a flute that's very quiet, and you're like, okay, that F sharp's in a whole nother realm of hearing possibilities. And so I think it's getting used to the context of it, and I think it's also being a little more structured in the orchestra setting, because you have more people in the mix, and so you have to be a little more structured in order to keep everybody on the same page. But that's also your job. And you did a great job. So I mean, it wasn't. It was certainly not. It was not challenging. It's just it's a different way of thinking about it.
Now, these are songs in which you're standing in the front of the orchestra, and we were next to each other. You have sung opera before, in which you are moving around the stage constantly, and you are acting, and you have everything absolutely memorized, and you're interacting with other actors and the music. I mean, how does it compare to just sitting in front of the orchestra and then being on stage far away from the conductor in an opera setting?
It's a little scarier, I would say, in the opera setting, because you are trying to juggle so many things. You're trying to juggle, you know, all the blocking that you're trying to do, as well as remembering what word comes next, what note comes next. You know, oh, your colleague took too many steps that way, now I have to readjust. And so I think it's more challenging in opera because of all those reasons that you said. You're memorized, you're moving, you're in character, you're not just Abby singing this song, you become the character. And so in orchestra and in oratorio or leader recitals, things like that, you can take more time to just think about the breath and just think about the text and think about, as I said earlier, like just honestly portraying the text and speaking the text as if I was reading the poem. And it's more intimate, I think. I think opera feels a lot more grand and a lot more spectacle, whereas I think what's really awesome about Strauss, doing these Strauss songs with orchestra, was the intimacy you felt, even though I had all those people behind me also joining in. And you can really take the time to just focus on all the little musical nuances and be true to everything that Strauss wrote, as well as Brentano.
Wonderful. Is there anything? One of the things that I noticed was that these songs are extremely varied in terms of dynamics. Sometimes they can get very, very loud. Sometimes they can get very, very soft. They're long phrases. Some of them are really long. How do you manage this stamina? I mean, how do you manage to have such strength of voice for such a long time and just still sound gorgeous all the time?
Well, it's a lot like being an athlete. You train and you do different exercises and you do different stretches, and you know, it's the same way the field goal kicker can kick the ball every time, or you know, 95% of the time. It's the same with me. It's like if I practice the phrase enough and get the breath under me, and it's not just practicing each phrase, it's practicing all the phrases together, because you can sing any phrase in one breath, no problem. But if you have been singing for 3 or 4 minutes beforehand, your breath is going to be in a different place. And so it's technique. It's the same way, as I said, with any athlete. They're going to take the time to learn the basics, learn the techniques, the foundation, and from there, it's like an artist's palette. You know, if you want a little red in the sound, you put a little red in the sound, and if you want a little blue in the sound, you put a little blue. But if you have the canvas, which is what I would consider technique, and the basics of singing, breathing, supporting, freedom, then everything else is artistry. And you know, stamina comes and goes. You know, I try to get 8 hours of sleep. I drink a lot of water. I eat my fruits and vegetables. You know, I mean, we are athletes, and so you have to sort of treat your body as if it is your instrument. And so, you know, if I have an orchestra rehearsal or whatever, I don't stay out late the night before, and I don't go out to a loud party where there's going to be a lot of talking. It's like you do have to sort of treat this as if it's a musical instrument and protect it as such. And that is really what helps stamina long term.
We're not going to do the whole entire work, okay? We're going to be doing just the beginning. Just the beginning, one time.
We had very limited time to put this together. The audience doesn't know this, but we put this together in what, 2 rehearsals we were talking about? Now, I had prepared the orchestra with an expectation, and you had prepared your songs with your own expectations about the orchestra, and then the first rehearsal happens, and what happened? How do you feel about it?
You rip the Band-Aid off. You know, that's it. You don't know what's going to happen. Everybody's nervous. I mean, I was nervous, and I know that the orchestra members were nervous about adding it all together. But that's kind of the beauty of it, and that's how a lot of productions come together. I mean, when you're rehearsing for an opera, you don't have the whole orchestra there for every blocking rehearsal. You do it with piano, and then you only add orchestra in the last week usually. So it's something that. There's always that nervous tension, but you have to rely on and trust each other. You know, we all have the music in front of us. We all are good musicians. We all know how to do it. It's just a matter of how can we make it artistically the best. And I think sometimes you just have to just go for it. You know, I think that's kind of what we did. We were just like, all right, we're going to start at the beginning. I'll see you at the end of number 5, and we just took notes. We did very little. Minor adjustments here and there, but I think just trying it and putting the pedal to the metal and just going through the whole piece, you're going to have mistakes. There's always going to be mistakes, but can you get from point A to point B? Yes, we can, and then you can kind of pick apart the parts in between. So I think it's just doing it.
Right. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Loved performing with you. I'm sure the audience is also going to love watching your performance with the orchestra. And before we wrap things up, is there anything you would like to say to aspiring young singers out there?
Learn your languages, as I learned from every good master class that I ever did. Learn your languages. And as I said as well earlier, be true to the text. You know, you don't have to act. You don't have to do a show. If you just perform honestly, that's what people want to see.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you
been
for
a
having me.
pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed the first piece. Today, you are listening to a program that revolves around nostalgia. Everything is some sort of legend or tale or story that talks about our past, our things that make us so comfortable, so homey. I don't know. Help me. Anyway, so as part of this repertoire, we have this set of amazing songs that Abigail will sing with us. She is the winner of our Young Artist Concerto competition. And it was a unanimous decision. She blew out everybody out of the water. She made the decision very easy for the panel. And we couldn't be happier that she's singing with us today. So I have asked her to talk a little bit of the Strauss herself. So you're on.
I always love to talk a little bit before a concert. Why not? So Strauss wrote many operas and is probably most known for his 4 last songs as far as lieder goes. not really in the realm of spec. So we're going to do these 5 first songs instead. And they were written by Brentano. And Brentano is a very interesting person. He was a very devout Catholic. He was also a philosopher and a psychologist. He actually was one of Freud's teachers. And so these texts are a little scandalous for someone of that century, as well as of the religious upbringing that he had. And so we can interpret these songs in 2 different ways. You can sort of go romantically with them as far as relationships, and you can read in the text that there is relationship. You can also go a little politically. And, this time of year, I think we all maybe go that way. But no, it is true that there is some scandal in it, and for him to be writing about that as the devout Catholic that he was sort of interesting. So we hope that you'll enjoy these. They start off very calm, very serene, and then we end with a real spitfire of Cupid. Thank you.